Okay, hang on a second.
Do you want to just test that, Mark, to check it's ready, and then I'll start letting people in?
Let people in now, that's fine.
Yep.
Everybody in.
You can test it up on the screen though if you'd like.
Right, are we there? Hello everybody, we're starting. We're letting everybody in.
Have we gone live, Mark?
Yes.
We're live.
We're live. We're live.
Good evening, everybody that's joining. Happy Friday.
Oh gosh, suddenly my screen is populating.
Hello, wine drinkers.
Hello, good evening.
Neasa, we're going to make sure that Neasa and if they're coming in, and Ken.
Yeah, I will look out for them. Good evening, Mark McCree. Welcome to you.
Jordan, Karen, there they go. Some faces.
Can I join you for a sec?
Yeah. Where's
No. Hello, Rita and Mark. Hello. I'm muted upstairs, so I have to come down to say hello to everyone. You'd like to do that in life, really.
Yeah, exactly. Is that how Mark normally has you set up?
Oh, like this. Wait, our sitting room's above our kitchen, so it's a funny house. Too much information?
Oh.
Most people are muted.
Yeah, everybody's muted on entry.
Okay.
This is somehow how it works.
Good evening, everyone that's joining us. I hope you've got a glass of wine already and have started sipping and you're not waiting for anyone to give you permission.
Right, yes, I can see Ken. Where's Ken? Let's unmute Ken. Keeps it.
Hi, Mark.
Oh, there, Ken.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, how are you guys?
Very good.
Very
Good
good.
to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
That's Aggie.
I can hear our
Aggie's
dog.
having her drink.
What's Nessa's email? What will she be known? What will she be seen as Nessa on the screen? Will she, Ken?
Yeah, she should be. She's obviously not logged on, is she?
Not quite yet. No, I think it's
Okay. I'll shoot her a quick text here.
That's all right. This is good. Okay.
Okay,
I think she might be in now, actually, as iPad NRS potentially. Is that her? Well, good evening and happy Friday, everybody. We're thrilled to have you with us for week 3 of our food and wine pairing evenings. We've got some yummy wines tonight, and we are going to mix up the format a little bit ever so slightly this evening, in that we'll like to spend the last 15 minutes or so this evening, by the time you've all had plenty of wine, to open up to the floor the kind of questions a little bit more. So what I'll do is I'll ask each of you, if you've got a question, to just drop a message in the chat and say that you'd like to ask a question, and then I will try and unmute you successfully, so that you can have a chat with Mark or our winemakers live yourselves this evening. So I'll kind of call out for questions maybe 15 minutes or so towards the end and remind you all, but yeah, save your really good questions. Takes the pressure off me, to be honest, because I missed some of the really good questions because I'm too drunk by the end. So yeah, it gives you guys a chance to ask your questions and do a bit of Q&A.
So what would be good, yeah, if there's anything comes up, ask, we'll get, try and unmute and we can ask directly, which would be nice, wouldn't it? Rather than sort of by text and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, look, welcome everybody. So first of all, good old glass of Viognier just to keep us going, which is always fantastic. I'm a couple of glasses in because I just need to chill before we start. We've had not technical issues, but we've had some just making sure everybody's online before we get here. So what I'd like to do is, welcome everybody, I'm going to a couple of things. I'd like to share my screen, and as you know from previous experience, I'm not the best at sharing my screen technically, but I'm going to share the screen because there's a couple of things I want to show. And then because we welcome Neasa, you're in the room because I've seen you, but I don't know if you're unmuted. Are you there? We go to speak of you.
Good evening.
Hey.
Yay!
How you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you? Hi, everybody.
Hi. Hi. I'm just going to do a couple of things. We've got because Neasa, welcome back, and Ken, who works with you, and welcome everybody. This is a return trip for you, Neasa, so thank you for coming back. There'll be quite a few people in the room who haven't seen your corporate video before, so I'm going to try and do a bit of screen sharing to show the site of the vineyard, then some of the images that we've got, so that we can just sort of position everything before we get started. So everybody, please make sure you've got a good glass of a white wine, a good glass of Viognier with you whilst we do this. And this is my this share screen type thing, which is very interesting. Okay, share my screen. Okay, can you see last week's curries, everybody?
We can, and they look fantastic. Lots of different colours there, so amazing we used the same recipe.
Okay, so not only are we wine tasting this time, of course, this time we're trying to sort of match food with it. So tonight with the Viognier, Rita and I hope lots of other people have done a French onion soup, which is out, and I'm in the kitchen at the moment, and it's actually bubbling away in the background. So I've got the beautiful smells of that wafting through, making my tummy rumble as we speak. But so there was a few of last week we were South Africa, and we did some Cape Malay chicken, and there was some really, I gotta say, it was absolutely delicious. Really enjoyed it. There you go. So I'm hoping if anybody's done the our French onion soup tonight, we might get a few pickies of that to share. Now, going to move on. As you know, I move. Sorry. Every time when I find a new wine, it generally either comes from introduction or it comes from the Vini Sud wine fair. And this is how I first came across the wines from Miquel. I was in the room, that particular room, and there are thousands of wines. And I basically spend the first 2 days just going up and down and tasting the wines. And it takes a really good wine to hit you in the face and say, I'm different from the pack. And the one that hit me, and I think actually it was the wine we're tasting tonight. It was the Solas Viognier, and it was about it was a 2 Februaries ago. And I on the basis of tasting it there, I went to the stand and met Ken. And Ken showed me through all the wines, and I found that there wasn't a single one I didn't really like. I loved them all, and as a result. In fact, actually, that was only a year ago. Hell, I'll tell you what, the reason why I know that is because normally we wouldn't ship without having visited the vineyard. But because we were all in lockdown, we'd only just, that was just before the lockdown happened. And we tasted all the wines and we managed to ship the wines, and they've been great ever since. So I'm just going to, we're going to talk about Viognier and Shiraz, and Viognier and Southern French, but it's basically the Syrah grape is a predominant one. And I'll just show a few pictures. The first time I got to know and love the Viognier grape was when I was basically co-driver for my boss. She had, her company car was a Ford Capri, and we would drive down and go out for 2 weeks wine buying for Victoria Wine and Grants at St James's. And one of her favourite haunts was, this is Condrieu. This is the Northern Rhone, Condrieu, where basically originally the best Viognier ever came from, or originated from, and also some of the top Syrahs in France. And that was a view, there was a restaurant there, we'd sit and have a slap-up dinner on expenses and have a bottle of Condrieu. And I think, to be fair to my boss, she didn't put the Condrieu on expenses because it was too expensive. That was just a treat. but it just formed my love of Viognier in the very first time. To give you so now I'm just going to, so Condrieu, in the 1960s, Condrieu was pretty much the only place in the world that grew Viognier. It's the smallest appellation contrôlée in France. It's very specific. We'll come on to tasting. Keep tasting whilst we're here. But in the 1960s, I think I've checked the figures. There was only about 14 hectares of Viognier planted worldwide. In 1985, it was up to about 35. By 1999, there were 100 hectares in Condrieu, and today they reckon that in Australia there's 1,400 hectares, California 1,100 hectares, Argentina 700 hectares, and 263 hectares. And I don't know what the figure is for the Languedoc, Neasa or Ken, but basically it's become it started off as Condrieu, and it's become sort of a great variety that the world knows. And there's a picture of some Condrieu. So let me stop the share a minute whilst we carry on talking about this Condrieu. So Neasa, are you unmuted, Neasa? Can you chat to us now?
Can you hear me?
We can. Yes, we can.
So thank you for joining us. Thank you. Oh, hang on, I'm going to my view. I'm going to go back to gallery view because I don't like seeing myself. Thanks for joining us again. So I've got a lovely glass of your the Solas Viognier in us. So first of all, just explain a bit about the history of Laurent Miquel, please.
Yeah, just to touch on your point there, there's about 5,000 hectares now of Viognier in France.
5,000. Okay. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously France #1, Australia #2. Yalumba have planted an awful lot of Viognier in Australia. That's kind of their we currently have about 45 hectares of those 5,000. So we're the biggest owners of Viognier in the Languedoc.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know.
Our history with Viognier kind of stretches back to, I guess, Laurent and his father's love for Syrah. So Laurent's dad, Henri, his nickname in the village is Monsieur Syrah because he absolutely loves that grape variety. And he's been planting it since he was 16, and now he's in his early 70s. So he's been planting it for nearly 60 years. And in 92, he decided to plant what we would consider a sort of a brother-sister type relationship with the Viognier. Viognier acts in the same way as Syrah. It likes a lot of sun. It likes poor soils, so very, very stony soils, and it grows in similar way than Syrah. It's a very difficult grape to grow, which is why it nearly got extinct. After the war, they were thinking about producing a lot of wine, and Viognier is not a grape that it's easy to produce a lot of wine with. So it was pulled up by a lot of the winemakers in the Rhone, where it's traditionally planted. It's very fickle, low yields, very small berries. So the ratio of skin to juice is very high. And that's why Viognier is such an aromatic grape, because in wine you get your aromatics from the skin, and having a lot of skin to very little juice means a very aromatic wine. So it's difficult to produce, and that's why a lot of people gave up in the 50s. But we felt there was something really interesting to do with Viognier in the south of France. And from the first harvest, which was 95, so we started planting in 92, you have to wait 3 years once you've planted your vines for your first harvest. And from 95, we could see straight away that the Viognier, with our soils and our sort of microclimate, made something really special. So what you've got here on the nose is this real sort of aromatics, peaches and apricots, but you've also got some lovely acidity and freshness on the palate. So we're really, really obsessed with keeping that nice freshness, not going too heavy, not getting too rich. It's easy with the Viognier, the small berries, to make something that's overpowering, but this has this lovely citrus and freshness on it, and that's the balance that we want to create with this wine.
Can I just interrupt you a second and go to this wine was written up by Jancis Robertson only very recently, and the reason why I know that is not because I do subscribe to Jancis Robertson's site, and her website is one where I think is one of only 2 or 3 in the world where people actually pay to read it, so because she's so sought after. She's written your white wines up, And I don't know. I tell you what, maybe I'll oh God, let me try and do a screen share again, because I've got the tasting note from her there. Do you know what? Look, it says night harvested, cool fermentation, stainless steel, heavy bottle. Unfortunately, I'd like your opinion on that, please, Neasa. Anyway, headily perfumed, creamy apricot, ground almonds, lightest dusting of dried sage. Fabulous acidity that zings through all that Viognier voluptuousness, turning it weightless and mouth-wateringly fresh. Citrus, jasmine, flutter paper wings on the finish. Very good value for money, 17 out of 20. And I tell you what, that's a seriously good tasting note. And
Guys, Mark, I wrote jasmine as my first comment, and I said I'm probably wrong. And I am honestly, this is the first time I've ever got it right.
Yeah.
I am thrilled.
You should be writing for Jancis Robinson.
Right, and I said lime as well, and some people, Gary and Patricia, have said yes, we can taste lime right at the end. Ah, this is my wine, guys. I found it.
So I tell you, but okay, I'll go back to Gary. So now the thing about that is that is a wonderful tasting note, and every single bottle that we had went to everybody here at the tasting tonight. I don't have a single bottle left. And then suddenly I started getting orders out of the blue, and I'd forgotten to take it off, save it out of stock, and people were buying it because they'd read Jancis Robinson's tasting notes. I was getting orders which I couldn't fulfill. So by the way, that's an order in the pocket for you, because we don't have any stock. But it's a fabulous now. But I think now the other thing is I did go and check her other tasting notes, and it's only a matter of time. She hasn't posted the tastings on your red wines yet. But the other thing was she tasted a couple of other Viogniers, because you may also be Monsieur Shiraz or Syrah. I wouldn't mind betting you're Monsieur or Madame Viognier as well, because you've got some great Viogniers. But she didn't quite like the oak aged Viognier as much as the unoaked Viogniers.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion on whether oak ages well in oak or not?
It's a different style, and the Verite Viognier, I mean, she gave it 16, I think, which is still a good score, but you would expect a more expensive wine perhaps to score higher. I think she just really loves the freshness in this wine and the balance and the acidity. This has no oak aging, so you're really just tasting that amazing aromatics from the berries, and then that lovely lime that Rachel noted there on the finish. So it's just a really attractive, really lifted, elegant, fresh wine. The oak aging with Viognier can do really well in oak because it's a grape and it's a wine that likes oxygen. So of course, if you age in oak, it gets time to age and to interchange, and that works to its benefit. But it's about getting the balance between the oak and the fruit right. And you do lose some of that purity and some of that minerality and clear as a bell sort of freshness that you get in this one with the oaked one. I will say we've brought out a new vintage since then, 2018, and that's been really, really well received by the press. We got 96 from Tim Atkin. I think that vintage is showing really, really well. So it's kind of, there's no right answer, I guess. It just depends on how a particular wine tastes on a particular day. And a wine like Verite will sort of have its, it will sort of go like this, like it'll be amazing. And then maybe a month later, the oak is showing a little bit more and the fruit is a little bit shy. So it will depend on just where it is. And it's a wine that, can be aged. So it's good to taste it over a couple of years, every 6 months, just to see where it stands.
So I don't know whether it's my history, but if I'm asked what are my favorite grape varieties now, and I'm just saying now because everything changes with time and age and situation, I'm into Viognier in a big way, and I think this is a cracking one. You've also got a Viognier Chardonnay blend, which I think works very well. But I mean, my favorite red grape seems to be at the moment Syrah. Well, so it's a big sort of Northern Rhone hit, and then that sort of travels down the Rhone into the Southern Rhone, into the Languedoc, where both of these grapes are now actually doing great things, aren't they?
Viognier is a great. Not everyone loves it, but if you love it, you really love it. You know, it's got such personality and such interesting layers of flavor. And I often say to people who say to me, "No, I really only drink red wine." I say, if you're going to try a white, try a Viognier, because people like red wine because of the layers of flavor and the length on the finish. You know, you're getting different flavors coming through a minute or two after. And in terms of whites, Viognier is, I would say, one of the whites that has the most character and layers of flavor and depth, and people who like red wines for the reason will like a Viognier. So
and equally, I think if you're trying to get from white wine into red wine, it's a good bridge to get from maybe Sauvignon Blancs and Pinot Grigios into red wine is try Viognier, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of complexity with it.
Yeah, I suppose just more multi-dimensional than your standard sort of Sauvignon.
Could I demonstrate that? Rachel, if you would unmute everybody, I think this is time for a group slurp. When you,
sure.
if everybody takes a mouthful, Rachel will ask you to unmute and then unmute. Take a mouthful, a good mouthful.
Oh.
You will all be able to unmute yourselves now. So let's all take a big mouthful, like Mark said, and pull it round. George and Karen, you're back center stage.
Cheers.
We're unmuted.
Cheers.
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 Yeah. Beautiful. Lovely.
Oh, see, that's everything.
Oh, there's Emily.
I love someone to be naked.
Emily.
Hi, Ivan.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hello.
Right, you noisy lot. I've muted you all again. And I've muted Mark. I will unmute you, Mark. That's fine. And I will get down to Neasa. Mark, I've asked to unmute you. You now need to unmute yourself.
Okay. So
there we go.
So to me, what I really love about Viognier is that there's a zing of acidity, there's a spice there. And I know you're waffling on about jasmine and stuff like that, but I'm getting apricots and peaches. And actually what particularly I like is that there's an oiliness, it coats the inside of your mouth. And that's when I know Ken was saying it's a sort of a transitional wine between white wine and red wine. It almost, if you didn't know what color it was, it's got no tannins, but it's got a richness. You might almost sort of think that there's a red wine sort of complexity there. And I think Viognier, and particularly this one, and I tell you what, Jantis doesn't chuck out 17 out of 20s, very good value for money, with a pinch of salt. Those are very rare. I think this is lovely. I think it's absolutely gorgeous.
I think everyone agrees with you, Mark. And we've had a really good question. When the bottle has reserve on it, what does that mean?
Over to Neasa. Is Neasa on?
Yeah, she's on. She's unmuted.
We have different levels of quality. We have over 40 hectares of Viognier. We have certain vineyards that we know will create something a little bit more special in terms of concentration of fruit, length, etc. So this is a selection of the best vineyards, which will give it the reserve title.
And Mark, is that the same for if I'm, scouring the Real Wine Company website and there's some wines from different vineyards that have reserve or reserva on them? Does that tend to suggest what it means?
Yeah, well, let me sort of blow our own trumpet. Yes, if we're stocking it, it does. But reserve or reserva in some countries has an official status. So if you're, for example, in Italy, if you're a Chianti Reserva or if you're a Rioja Reserva, it actually has got, it must mean something that's specific about how it's been aged and when it's been aged. If you are in an area where reserve just means the producer's reserve, then it's down to the honesty of the producer to say that this is our reserve, and this is what we think is our best wine, or whatever we deem to mean by reserve. So if you go to a supermarket and you say sort of table wine reserve. It just means it means absolutely nothing. They're trying to pretend.
But with your producers, it tends to mean that it's the
it always does,
best grapes and
ship from people we know, like, honour, and trust. So yes, so a reserve in the sense that if Neasa says it's their reserve, we know it's their reserve. If a supermarket says it's a reserve something, it's just a marketing tool. So there you go. So
this
rant over.
For those who are interested, this wine is £12.50 a bottle on the website. I think, Mark, actually there was something that before we move on to the red, because it's coming up to past, so we will move on to the red shortly. But before we do so, Neasa, when you were describing the wine and saying, we've talked, both of you have actually mentioned now it's a little bit like a red wine. You talked about it being able to, hold up to those kind of big flavors. It's got some complexity. So we've lots of people have cooked the French onion soup to have with the wine tonight. But Neasa, give us some other things that you think would be delicious to eat alongside this wine.
Yeah, so it's a great food wine in general. Lots of different things. Last week's curries probably would have gone quite nicely with this.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah, anything that's got that sort of fragrant and a little bit of spice, because this wine has a little bit of spice and a little bit of nuttiness. Really, really good. So if you think about a Thai green curry or, a jalfrezi or something, really, really good. It'll go with seafood. So the sort of more meatier, fishy side of things. So scallops, fantastic. Any kind of langoustine, lobster, any of that family, really, really good. We would serve it down here with, we have a stew made of onions, tomatoes, a little bit of garlic, and octopus.
Oh, yeah.
Yum.
Really,
Galician kind of style food. Yum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have a tart here that's made with that kind of, and we do stuffed squid as well. Really, really good. It'll go fantastically with the cheese board. So in this house, we will always serve Viognier with our cheese rather than a red wine. The acidity just cuts through a fatty cheeses really, really nicely. So fresh goat's cheese, something like a nutty kind of semi-mature cheese with a little bit of nuttiness. So in France, it would be something like a Comté or a Cantal entre deux, or some of the aged Dutch cheeses, the aged Gouda that has that saltiness.
Oh, yeah.
A glass of Viognier with that will be really, really fantastic.
The president's favorite cheese is a Comté.
Yeah. So it's that works well. And then you could go to things like chicken, creamy chicken, even pork with apricot stuffing. Really, really good.
So I've thrown out there, Neasa, I threw out there when I got my lime, I threw out there a bit of Mexican food, like a homemade taco, like something that's got, again, like a little bit of spice, some citrus, maybe like a mango coriander-y type salsa. I dare people who are brave enough to make the Cape Malay curry that we did last week and then try it with this one as well and see how you fare. But I think so many options there. Let's move on to our, as if by magic, one that I prepared earlier.
Okay, this is when we're on to the reds now. Of course, I'm afraid this sounds like a bit of an old record, but when we put these wine tastings in, we didn't have enough wines to do everything. So half of us tonight have got the Côte 136 or 136 Pêche Césarine, and half of us have got the Casalviel Vieille Vigne. Both of these are Saint-Chinian reds.
Rita wants to know what she's got.
What might happen?
You have one.
Okay, and then we'll swap.
Yeah, we'll swap. There you go. Of course, it's tough, isn't it? We've got to open both bottles. Sadly here, because both of you. Both of them are delicious. They are different styles, but they're both fundamentally red Saint-Chinian, and they are both 15% alcohol. I don't know if you've seen the back label, but these are these are not shy and retiring wines. These are wonderful wines. And the thing I would say about alcohol is that alcohol level doesn't matter, except that if it's out of balance. So if sometimes you can have a 15% alcohol wine and it just feels heady and alcoholic, then that is bad. But if you've got a wine like either of these two, you don't notice the alcohol. That's just a wine in balance. So the alcohol is a product of a well-balanced. In a good wine, the alcohol level doesn't matter. It's just a product of a well-balanced wine. And in both of these cases, these are both 15%. You don't. You end up getting 15% because you've got so much flavour coming through onto the wines. So, Neasa, can you tell us the split? I mean, let's start off with the Cote 136 for those of us who've got that. The Cote 136. I'm going to read a bit from it's 78% Syrah, 20% Grenache, and 2% Mourvedre, and that's interesting. Just chuck in a 2% of Mourvedre, and I like the idea of a 2% tweak because that shows a little sort of attention to detail. It's got 91 out of 100 from the Wine Advocate, and anything over 82 is a good score. Tasting notes: cassis, licorice, acidity, minerality.
Don't read out all the hat tricks I've got, Mark.
But it's great.
Licorice. Anyone got licorice? I've got. I read the bottle. I've got licorice.
So the 136, that's Pêche Césarine. It's a single vineyard. So Neasa, tell us about this one before we move on to the Casalviel.
Yeah, so the Cote is a single vineyard, and Pêche Césarine is actually, so in the south of France, Cote, or the Pêche, which is the Occitan translation, is just a single site that we have identified where we've been growing Syrah for a long time. And we identified these single vineyards, just one plot, that creates something really special in a wine. So with this Syrah, you've got, we've harvested a little earlier than we have with the Casalviel. So harvesting a little earlier just means we're really concentrating on this fruit. So you get this cassis, this intense red fruit flavors. And then we macerate for a long, long time to really allow the intensity of fruit to come through. So this is made in a style that's nearly a little bit retro. We're going back to the way we made the wines in the 60s and the 70s. So a little bit earlier harvesting and letting the fruit really express itself. So rather than using too much oak, we're really letting this wine show the beautiful flavors from the Pêche. What you'll also get on the nose is a lot of garrigue. So garrigue is the maquis, or the bush surrounding the vine. So a lot of rosemary, sage, wild thyme, all of these surrounding herbs will influence the final wine. So it's a very sort of savory mix along with the red fruits. And it creates, again, we were saying about the Viognier, but this is similar in the red. It creates a lot of layers of flavor. So first you get a burst of fruit, but then you get these wonderful layers of flavor coming through on the second and after a little while. And that's what makes this wine so special. It's a Saint-Chinion. Saint-Chinion is one of the appellations in Languedoc. It's one of the cru appellations, along with Faugère, the neighboring one. It's not a well-known appellation. So a lot of people don't know what Saint-Chinion means or you know, what to expect from a Saint-Chinion. We're in the southern part, and we use a lot of Syrah, so that makes these kind of wines.
That's the Cote 136. Those who are on the Casalviel also make sure you've got a glass and talk about the Casalviel. Then we got talk about the two different wines, and then let's talk about, because I absolutely want to come on to the Saint-Chinion and the local varieties. So if you don't mind talking about the Casalviel.
So Casalviel is our home estate, and the Miquels have owned it since 1791. So they've owned it, you know, basically since just after the French Revolution. So Laurent, my husband, is the 8th generation making wine there. And this is a similar blend, Syrah, Grenache, and a dash of Mourvedre. This is harvested a little later, so the potential is a little higher with this. Oh, still there? Yeah, sorry, just sharing the screen.
Yeah. Mark's was showing the pictures.
So you can see it's actually a little village with a lot of little houses there. Laurent's parents live there, his sister, aunties, uncles, and we also have people who work. We have winemakers who come to work with us, who live in all those little houses surrounded. And you can see the Carrox Mountains in the background. That's the Massif Central. So we're up at already a higher altitude, which give us cooler nights, which is great. And we get a tramontane wind coming from the mountains. So although we get a lot of sun during the day, we get cooler evenings, and that creates this wonderful freshness that you get in the Casalvial wine. This wine is aged in oak barrels. So it's aged in mostly second use oak barrels for 1 year. And as I said, it's a blend of Syrah, Grenache, a little bit of Mourvèdre. Syrah brings this gorgeous red fruit and some pepper, white pepper. Grenache is more the plummy ripeness in the wine, and Mourvèdre can give a little bit of like leather and a little bit more animalistic varietals. Hence, we give it a little touch, not too much.
I like a little bit of animalistic in the wine. But 2% is an interesting one, because you think that's not quite enough to make it obvious, but maybe, of course, a good winemaker is not looking for obviously, looking for subtlety. But I think both of these wines, and I'm so pleased to have a glass of both of them. They are different, but they're both absolutely exceptional. They're both deliciously Syrah, predominantly Syrah, and then the Grenache that comes from which is the predominant grape of Châteauneuf-du-Pape further north. But they're different styles, and they are absolutely gorgeous. And going on, I know that we sort of chose the recipe tonight based on the Viognier, but I've got to say that when we go down to the region, we go to Carcassonne. If ever I go to a good restaurant and it's on the recipe, I absolutely want cassoulet. I go for a cassoulet every time, and I love it. And with the cassoulet, I'm guessing, I'm almost certain that either of these two wines would be brilliant with a good cassoulet, wouldn't they? Yeah.
So cassoulet is the home is Carcassonne. Well, Castelnaudary, they have a bit of a rivalry around that. But cassoulet is based on obviously beans, and they're very passionate. They get the year's harvest of the beans with their own vintage beans, etc., etc. And I've actually had the luck to partake in a cassoulet masterclass. There are people who are nominated master cassoulet makers, and I got to do a workshop with one of them. So it's really interesting. They start with a wine base, and then a lot of wild herbs, so thyme, rosemary, anything that they can gather in the garrigue. And wild herbs are much more pungent, much more aromatic than what you'll buy in a little sachet down the supermarket. And they create the base out of that with some onions and garlic and reduce that down. And then you obviously are doing the beans, and then they'll add in confit de canard, so duck confit, some sausage from Toulouse. So it's like a big rustic pork sausage with a lot of herbs again in it, a lot of flavor in that. And then they'll put some tomatoes in the sauce, maybe some bacon, some lard, all these things. It's wouldn't be on the Weight Watchers diet, I would guess. But it's a really hearty, really interesting dish. And then you top it off with breadcrumbs, and then you're supposed to bake it in the oven, and then you break up the top and then bake it again, and then you break up the top and then you bake it again. You're supposed to break the top 7 times before your cassoulet is done.
I'll tell you what, I have never, the idea of a cassoulet masterclass is now top of my wish list.
Well, I've already said, Mark, why weren't we having cassoulet tonight? It's been...
Because I'll tell you exactly why. Because I love cassoulet, and I've done as I said before, we go to Carcassonne there. Every time we go to the region, if it's on the menu, I will have it. And we've tried it at home and never managed to recreate it, and never ever. And so I feel, I like to think that the present Mrs. Hughes and myself are good cooks, but cassoulet is not something we've mastered yet. So
there you go. You need to do masterclass.
Yeah, we want the and it would be absolutely brilliant with either of these two red wines. Absolutely stunning.
Yeah. It's one of these dishes that takes time, because everything has to come together, and there's a lot of elements, and people are very adamant about their recipe. Some people will have specific ingredients, and other people will, sniff at that and say, no way, a lot of tomato, no tomato, etc. But
I think if ever
is very important.
Yeah, if ever there was a time to try slow cooking, it's during, a lockdown. We've got the time. Okay.
Are you prepared?
But it's really about creating the flavor, Mark, at the start with the wine, reducing down your wine with those herbs, getting really fresh herbs and creating that base. And then if you've got good beans and good coffee.
Are you prepared? Are you prepared to share the recipe with us?
Yeah, sure. I'll send you on a recipe.
Speaking to Mark the other night, he was asking about some local dishes that would go with the wines, and I hadn't even mentioned the cast out of cassoulet, and he was all over it straight away. So you really are a lover of cassoulet, Mark. Yeah, that's for sure.
I'm a cassoulet guy, don't you worry.
Yeah.
And then obviously we do like lamb chops, cooked on, we do often do a barbecue on the vineyard. So we pull up old vines, we keep the wood, and we'll use that to cook our meats on top of. It gives amazing flavor. So you do like lamb chops, those little skinny lamb chops, or you could do sanglier, which is wild boar. Same thing with sort of herbs, and has been macerated in wine, and that would be a really nice mix too. So
I think for we've got some vegetarians amongst us, something like a halloumi, so like a salty cheese, but like marinated in some of those kind of wild herbs. Again, you've said macerated like a few times, Neasa, and I love it's such a nice word, but it's also such a nice foodie like terminology. Macerated rhubarb, like letting things like sit and let the flavors like sink into stuff. So I think that with halloumi and those different herbs, then grilled on the barbecue, or
would you believe one of the attendees at the cassoulet masterclass was vegan? We found out the night before. So it's possible to make vegan cassoulet.
I tell you what, and the other thing is, I've got and I've got to admit here that because we sold out of the Solas Viognier, I'm not drinking that. I'm drinking your other Nord Sud Viognier because we didn't want to disappoint anybody. On the Solas Albarino, on the back it says, or is it on the front? It says suitable for vegans. And can you just and I don't know, does the Viognier also say that? And what's your definition of suitable for?
So some wines in the past were made by fining with things like fish. I'm not exactly which part of the fish. Or
it was the bones.
Fish bones, I think ground up fish bones. Or some, or even they use like bull's blood or something like that to fine the wines. And basically we have now a different alternative to fine our wines. So no animal products are used in the making of the wines. I mean, technically, if you want to say, like, obviously wine is made from grapes, so it's vegan friendly, but some techniques are not vegan friendly in that they use animal products in the production of wines, and we've eliminated that, so our wines are vegan friendly.
Okay, so what we've got here is, what I want is I've got a vegan friendly white wine, which is 17 out of 20 and to die for, and potentially a vegan or vegetarian cassoulet to go with it. I'm talking... Yeah. And I'm talking as somebody who loves red meat as well as anything else. But I want to have that combo. So can we share both of those things with everybody here on our Zoom tasting tonight next week, Neasa?
No problem. Yeah.
And Neasa, how many bottles of wine do you produce a year? We've tried 2 of your wines. Was 3. Mark's tried 3, by the way, just to hammer that point home.
We make about 30 different wines, which is quite a lot.
Okay. And how many bottles?
Total production of our bottles, we make about 4 million bottles.
That's also bottles. I'll tell you what, the other, and by the way, when I go back to the point when I went to Vinny Sud that time, it's probably only God, it is only a year ago.
Only a year ago, would you believe that? Imagine if someone had told you a year ago what was about to happen.
I know.
We'd have fallen over, or we'd have thought they were crazy.
And I would normally never buy wine if we hadn't been to the vineyard and checked you out and tasted and everythything, but because we were in lockdown. But tasted your one wine, that Viognier, went to taste with you at the stand and tasted everyone. And honestly, and this is very rare, I'm not just saying this because you're on screen, but there wasn't a single one I didn't like and I didn't think was good value for money. Every single one of your wines, and you mentioned the fact that you've got a wide variety of wines you do, but they're all fantastic. And they're all, and
Thank you. Very nice.
When it goes up a little bit in price, it's a little bit better in quality. And you've got them sort of stretched out absolutely properly in terms of
I think that's important to say that, sometimes people think Languedoc and they think, oh, value wines. But then if they're going to spend a little more, they're going to go to the Rhone or somewhere else. But actually, if you spend a little more with the Languedoc, the value is amazing. It's amazing. It's almost nearly, more interesting. Yeah. Because we don't have an appellation, people know we've got to really show something amazing for the money. So
we are coming up to the last 15 minutes of our tasting. I mean, hard to believe. Time goes by when you're drinking good wine. But we did commit that we would open up the floor and I would attempt to unmute people that have got questions or who'd like to talk to Neasa or Ken or Mark. Lots of people have commented already about tourism, about the Languedoc, about whether we can come and visit you. So I might put someone on the spot unless they want to ask a question. And James and Catherine, I'm going to come to you and you're going to prepare a question. It sounds like it's probably going to be about, a question to Mark. So let me close my chat. And
Rachel, what does that mean?
Hello,
James and Catherine.
I fear that we've been unleashed on the world, Mark, and it's not going to be a pretty sight. But nevertheless, it sounds like we need to spend a couple of days at this particular vineyard on the RWC World Tour.
Yeah. So which world tour are you talking about?
The Real Wine Company tour around Western Europe, tasting wine that we've sampled throughout the course of our lockdown.
And when we're out of lockdown, I can think of no finer people to share it with than you two and others in this room tonight. And I tell you what, we before we this afternoon, Rita and I were looking at tourism in the area, and if you'll just bear with me again, because I'm not very good at screen sharing, but I'm going to try and screen share again. We talked about what's in the region. So when we get our luxury coach of a 60-person luxury coach with all the facilities, bar, toilet, shower, everything, then we're going to go to Carcassonne, and then we're going to go to Narbonne, which is right close. That's the canal that runs through Narbonne.
Yes.
What wouldn't you like to do? And so there's some restaurants there to die for. That's the market. Rita, tell me, that's the market in, I think it's Uzès. I'm not quite sure where that is. I know it's local. And then there's the Pont du Gard. All of these are within 50 miles of each other on our grand tour. Oh no, that's Uzès. So that market must be. Oh no, it's Pézenas. That's Pézenas. Moliere's town. And we picked out some photographs of areas where we're thinking, well, hell, we really want to do this RWC tour of going to visit Chateau d'Or de Gueule, which we did a couple of weeks ago, Neasa's winery here.
Lovely area.
And I tell you what, we could have an absolute blast. We really could.
We're signed up, Mark. We're ready to go.
They're in. Well done, guys. Well covered. In the interim, I got kicked off the internet completely and have now had to dial in on my mum's phone.
I don't know how to control my screen.
Mark, what people really want you to commit to is when are we doing the real? It's not where we're going. When are we doing it?
No, don't ask me. Ask the government when we're all allowed. We'll ask the French when they'll allow us to go in and do it. Ask EasyJet when they'll allow us to fly down there and all meet up together. So
21st of June.
we'll do it when we're allowed.
Next year.
Come down for harvest. We'll put you to work. You can earn your keep.
Fair play, Neasa, fair play.
I think actually they relaxed the rules on the UK to France today. Actually, that's probably worth it.
I'm not sure it equates to 60 of us going down in a coach.
I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but you know,
we can't even get to Wales from the UK yet. I say the UK from England. We can't even go and see Mark and Rita for a bit of supper. That's what we're angling for.
Yeah, but
well, at least we can still drink good wine, you know.
No, I tell you what, no, but the Real Wine Company tour is absolutely on the cards as soon as we can. Whenever that is, we don't know, but whenever that is. And I'll get Rita driving the coach. I'll sit up the front with the mic.
No, guys, Rita's not driving the coach. That's absolutely not happening.
You have to be able to taste the wines.
Yeah,
well, when you're ready, we're here. We'll be ready for you. You're very welcome.
Yeah. Any more questions for Neasa?
Put your hand up. That's going to be the best way, because then Mark can unmute you. Put your hand up. James has got another question.
So on a slightly more serious note, throughout all of the wine tastings that we've had, and to play to Rachel's heart too, we very often end up discussing biodiversity, and not that it's a massive it's a massive part in the wine that I drink, although Peter had some interesting observations around using chemicals on ground within South Africa, and I understand that because it's very dry and sometimes it's required. But in Western Europe, where we have more rain, I do wonder how much biodiversity plays within wine producers, and whether or not it's a real consideration or whether or not it's sometimes just a marketing ploy. Bit controversial.
What do you mean by biodiversity? Do you mean organic or sustainable, or
burying
confused biodiversity with biodynamic?
Beg your pardon, Rachel, quite right. Yes, I do apologise. You spot on the money. Biodynamic. So burying cow horns in the corner of the vineyard.
We're not biodynamic. It's a theory. It's a very popular theory. A lot of it is based on, it's not scientific. So, somebody decided it'd be a good idea to bury a cow horn at a certain time in the growing season. I mean, for sure, anyone who works on the land, so farmers in the UK or Ireland or whoever, everyone knows that the moon has cycles that affects an awful lot of things, including ourselves. And so, some of the aspects of biodynamics are, we would say, just good sense. And some of them we would say are marketing. There's a lot of different levels to it. So there's organic certification, sustainability, which we've very much bought into. I would say that a good winemaker in the south of France should pay very close attention to what is going on in his vineyard, to the weather patterns, to earlier harvest dates. So we're harvesting earlier and earlier every year. So there is something going on. Our biggest concern right now is harvesting water and keeping the vineyard in balance over the year. So we do a lot of things in the vineyards to make sure that our grapes grow in a healthy way. And that would include minimizing chemical treatments. So we're very much against using chemicals to try and fight against nature, because you'll always lose.
So that's really, sorry, Rachel, really quickly, that's really interesting, because from in the UK, we've got plenty of water, and in Ireland too. So you can turn the crops over, you can chuck a load of manure on the land, you can do, and I studied agriculture at uni and I understand soil chemistry. So I get the whole physiology around supporting microorganisms in the earth and all of that kind of good stuff.
Your earth alive, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really get within South Africa, where water may be really, really short, that actually turning the ground over frequently is going to destroy soil structure, and you're going to lose water, and it's possibly better to use some chemicals to maintain weeds than it is to turn the ground over. And you've made an interesting point there. Do you feel, you've just mentioned water management, is that something that you've mentioned that you're now really actively concentrating on that? Dare I bring up the term climate change? Is that something that you feel is affecting wine production?
Oh, completely. Yeah. There's no doubt in our minds that, that has been a big factor in the last 20 years. And it means we have a different harvest every year. Very unpredictable, So what we've done is we've actually built a lake on our property to harvest water during the winter. It took 5 years to get planning permission and permission from the state, literally 5 years, to dig a hole. No, a glorified hole. But it does rain here, but it rains mostly in the winter time. And what we want to do is keep the vineyards in balance. So if we harvest the water in the winter, sometimes in 3 or 4 days, we'll have massive storms here and we'll fill the lake. It's 500 million litres. It's massive. And then we'll have it all throughout the growing season. We'll just give tiny drops to the vineyard. You don't want to give it too much water. You don't want to give it too much vigor, because you're trying to keep it in balance and allow the grapes to ripen gently and slowly and get enough sun, not too much. But water management for us is a huge investment, and it's a huge risk for the future. If we don't do that and we don't invest, we're not going to be able to produce the likes of the Viognier that you tasted down here. It's just going to get too hot. The grapes will ripen too quickly. They'll literally shrivel on the vine, and you're getting overripe, high alcohol, not the kind of wines people want to drink.
That's really interesting.
I think our advantage versus, let's say, other more traditional areas like Chablis, etc., is that we've been working on this for 30 years because we've had sun for a long time, and we've always known that we needed to create that balance. So a lot of the stuff we've been put in place for the last 30 years is now catching up with other regions, and you're seeing classic regions producing wines that are a bit fat. They're not understanding what's going on,
And you guys have raised a super interesting topic, which I know that like Mark and Rita, you feel like really passionate about sustainability and about, reducing the impact that we all have. Someone earlier mentioned the weight of the bottle. And one of the wineries, Mark.
Francis Robinson.
Yeah.
One of them, yeah, Dennis. So when we were in New Zealand, Yealand's, one of the big sustainable wineries there, has recently shifted to PET, so like plastic bottles, because they're lighter, but also because they can make them out of plant proteins. Neasa, like France, very traditional, very heavy bottles, traditionally again. Weight has always equated to quality. What's the view on like bottling in plastic, or in not plastic, but like PET, sustainable, materials that aren't glass?
We would not go for, because we like our wines to age potentially, or to have the potential to age. And PET, the lifespan is about 9 months to a year. You've got to drink the wine before then, otherwise it's gone. But we're very open. We're actually looking at a project to put wine in cans, dare I say it. So putting wine in cans for people who are on the go, for people who are on their own, but really high quality wines. I know there's a really interesting project. I'm not part of it, but in the UK as well, to put wines in bag in the box, but really nice wines in bag in the box. So that's like a bag.
I've got some experience of that, and so for me, that bag in the box is I have a really good. Let me go back. 85% or more of the world's annual production of wine is consumed within a year of production. So we're talking about mass wines. So PET and bag in the box and all those things is great for wines that are intended to be drunk young, as most of them are. But when you're looking at wines, and I'm thinking about certainly the two reds that we tasted, or the reds we tasted tonight. And actually, I also dare say the white wine that we've tasted tonight, which will age, and it'll age beautifully. those are not wines which you can put into PET or bag in the box, because they will age, and they'll age beautifully, but they'll age in bottle, and the bottle is the thing that holds them, and it's the cork. It's the cork in the case of the red wines, which allows.
Oh God, let's stop him now. Let's stop him at the cork.
I want to talk about corks.
Just for a straw poll, though, I've got you on gallery view, so I can see all of your faces.
Everybody's falling over in boredom. Hey, okay, Nessa, your top three favourite wines. Nessa. Nessa, we want to know. We're talking about desert island disc wines. What are your top 3 favourite wines?
I think Nessa's frozen. So while we try and get her back,
I'll
click on her and try and get her back.
Don't tell you what I want.
I was going to. Yeah, go on then, Mark.
Okay. Last time, we didn't do it last time with Peter, did we? Because in Excelsior, because we sort of ran out of time. And the previous time we had Les Simnel Red, because that was the very first one we ever did when we started the business. Now I'm going to tell you the best one I've ever drunk, which I didn't pay for. We were at just me. I was at working for Grants and St James's, and hang on, I'm just going to change the view here because I can't see properly. It was Grants and St James's, and I was the rookie, and my boss Angela, she who had the Ford Capri, where we drove down through and had lunch at Condrieu, as we just mentioned earlier, and we were one of the biggest UK importers of claret the biggest UK importers of claret, and the guy who was selling to us was a guy who actually owned Chateau Petrus. Christian Wex was his name, and so he owned the chateau, one of the best and most expensive chateau in Bordeaux, but he also had a business of selling bulk wines and negociant. And we went to lunch there, and I was the rookie, my boss Angela, and we had white gloved servants bringing us lunch, and I was in 7th Heaven, just out of university, and he brought on a decanter of red wine, and he challenged my boss Angela to say, right, what do you think of this? And she said, she went through this whole tasting thing, which I subsequently went through. She said, right, okay, it was red. It's predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon, so therefore it's the Médoc rather than the Saint-Emilion. And she went through and she said, I would say, looking by the colour, it's a great vintage. I would say it's 1961. I think it's Pauillac. I would say, judging by what I think it's 1961 Chateau Latour. The guy, Christian Wex, he said, well, fair dues, he said, bloody well, it was Chateau Latour, 1961. And I tell you what, at that time, that bottle of wine was if I wanted to buy it, it was my annual gross salary. So how about and I realized at that point what a wine was worth. I couldn't possibly afford it, but tell you what, it was bloody good. So that's one of my desert island discounts.
Okay, and I have to say it is now gone 8 o'clock, but everybody's hungry or has other places to be. Okay,
well, fair enough. What about me?
Before we go,
I tell you what, I was enjoying the moment. What can I say?
You were doing well, Mark. You were doing very well.
I tell you, Rachel, unmute everybody, and we'll say good night, because I fancy some onion soup with my viognier.
Mark, you're going to have to unmute everyone because I haven't got control anymore. I've lost it. So you're going to have to do it. I want to know whether people are interested in sustainability or not interested in sustainability. So give me and then we'll be able to work out whether we let things.
I'm interested in Mark carrying on.
Carry on, Mark.
Carry on, Mark.
Carry on,
yes.
Tell us about
It's a new film. We'll go get some soup.
Tell us about corks, Mark. Tell us about corks.
Yes, at the bottom here. Tell us about the cork.
So Mark, those who just a question for those that don't like beef next week. Have you got an alternative recipe?
Chicken.
Yeah, yes.
Wild boar.
Garlic.
Clearly.
Kangaroo.
Hang on, getting unruly, so I had to mute you all. Yes, you probably can't even hear me now.
No.
Okay. Yeah, the answer is yes. We do have tomorrow. Next week we're doing Barolo and Dolcetto, and of course the classic recipe is beef in Barolo, and we have done beef in Barolo, but it has been pointed out to us that that's not everybody's taste. Or so we're going to also do a pizza. So we suggest that everybody make a pizza because it's classically Italian. And you can just do whatever pizza you found, but please don't just buy a pre-prepared pizza.
You can if you want.
You can if you want. Make your own. Do your own
Mark,
pizza.
may I interrupt? May I interrupt? Because I have been to Barolo, the Barolo region in Italy, quite recently. Had some delicious wines. Things that would actually go really well. Any kind of steak. The Barolo region's big on beef. They're like a big beef, producing region. So anything, any kind of steak with salad, with even some chips, whatever you like your steak with, the Barolo will drink delicious.
No. So what? No, but what we're talking about here, Rachel, is that anybody who doesn't want meat, do a pizza.
No, anyone that doesn't want meat, I would again do you like mushrooms? Do you have any truffle oil hidden at the back of your cupboard? Do you have any nice picante cheese? If you don't eat cheese, go for mushrooms, go for some miso, something that's quite salty with umami on toast.
Do a pizza.
You can, but I feel like we're putting pressure on people to make pizza.
No. We're giving an alternative. We're giving an alternative. We're going to do. We've done beef. We've done ox cheeks. Not in Barolo, because I'm not spending 30 quid on a bottle of sauce, and also it hadn't arrived in at the time when we made it, and also and it'll be delicious, and we're going to have that, but we're going to make a pizza as well. We are.
What about the other day? I made Italian spaghetti meatballs, a really, really easy recipe, and maybe that will go very well with those Italian wines.
Send us the recipe.
Give us.
I think it was just the BBC Good Food recipe.
Yeah, perfect. If you but before the end of the weekend, any alternative recipes, we'll share them with everybody here tonight, and then everybody does their own thing.
Yeah, we want a photograph.
But we want a photograph afterwards, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Sounds good. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you for that.
Right, with that, I'm gonna kick Mark off.
Lovely evening. I think we're going to go and eat now.
And it was very, very interesting to hear all the sort of information that Neasa gave to us. I thought it was very interesting. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Good night. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye. Cheers. Yeah. Bye.
Bye, Davy, and hello, Davy.
Yes. See you in a few minutes.
See you later.
Carry on, everybody.
Know each other.
Yeah, we might see Barry as well if he livens up.
If Mark left this channel open, we could just carry on chatting for the rest of the evening.
We could indeed.
Well, we've got to eat now. We've got to eat. Let's get some onion soup on the go here.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Barry.
Yeah. Bye bye, Jack and Martin and Rachel.
We wanted her three. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye now.
Bye-bye, Mark and Rita.
Bye.
Good night, all.
Bye. Bye, Mark and Rita.
Bye.
Bye. And then there were a few.
Where's
This is gone, I think, now. Hi, Graham.
James and Catherine, whilst you're still there.
Lovely. Nice question.
Yeah. I didn't realise you were an agronomist.
Yeah, no, I studied agriculture when I was at uni years ago. So yeah, I found Peter's comments about using herbicides to protect the land I thought was a particularly interesting point, and something that warranted a bit more investigation, because it's not something, if you were an organic farmer, if like Dad grows grass on a heavy clay loam, you wouldn't consider using chemicals where you could turn the soil over. But of course, when you've got a heavy clay loam, you can't get onto it in the winter. If you turn it over too soon, the clay bakes in the sun, so it makes it very unworkable with traditional kit, particularly in the olden days. And we're thinking horse and plough, going back that kind of age. So we're introducing organic matter onto the land means that you help to break up the clay, all of that kind of good stuff. You help include drainage. It's a fascinating subject. It really is.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, interestingly, when we had we've been up to Tamal Pass, obviously, and we the only, apart from a bit of local cheese, the only cheese we have is John Bourne's Cheshire cheese. One of the things that remains in my memory, above all, apart from playing the organ up in one of the barns, was the unpasteurized milk that we had once.
Yeah.
God. And I don't know what the shelf life of that is, probably only a day or two, but boy, was it delicious. And I think, well, if you can make milk like that, you're going to make good cheese, and you're going to grow it, organically, and being part of that, it's just a wonderful. We just absolutely loved it. Of course, because we can never, it's too far away from us to have it regularly. But we would, if we live locally, that's all we would ever drink in milk.
We'll have to bring it across.
When I have 2 or 3 days off wine, I drink milk, and I buy, and we buy local organic full cream milk.
Yeah,
but it's not the quality that your family makes.
It's a bit. I think it that sort of sentiment translates directly into some of the producers who make the wine that they make. And when you've introduced us to the producers, and clearly we wouldn't have known that when we were buying the wine, but particularly when you hear somebody say, we run a really, really tight ship, the effort that we have to go to make sure that the wine matures in open barrels in the way that it's required to be able to produce either biodynamic or organic wine without using sulfites. And I'm thinking about the Liberté wine that you introduced us to from La Mothe Vincent. And I've been drinking La Mothe Vincent for years. I mean, I've got some very old bottles still left of that stored. But their Liberté was a proper revelation for us. We're always looking for new stuff, but that was a real eye-opener. And it's the same principle.
We're running out of space. We ran out of space.
You just got to drink more. You just got to drink faster.
Not trying hard enough.
We bought the biggest wine fridge we could buy.
Well, we could fit, I should say.
Yeah,
we could fit.
It's still piled into the conservatory.
Yeah, bottles.
Masses of it.
But you're right. I think, to me, the Liberté was a game changer for sulfur-free wines.
Agreed.
It all went. So
we're out of stock. We're out of stock of the Rossignol. So we're about to place an order for the new vintage of the Rossignol as well as the Liberté. But I absolutely agree. Liberté to me was a sulfur-free game changer in wine terms.
I mean, you've known from the conversations that we've had that I've always had an issue with sulfite in wine, and particularly wine that's travelled, which is why I've concentrated mainly on European wines. It travels less, But what's been a real opener, I mean, the Coke 136 that we've had this evening isn't something that I've had before. I've always veered away from Syrah, but through the wine tasting, there have been. It is delicious. It's always been delicious. But what's interesting is, and I don't know whether or not this is just through a tolerance perspective or just a quality perspective, but I haven't woken up with a headache on a Saturday morning quite that I would have expected to.
I tell you what, and that is something that we've always known,
drinking
never been able to quantify. And so I know in my mind exactly what it is. It is clean wine producers.
Yeah.
They respect the soil. They respect what they do. They don't add sulfur. You can't actually make a marketing claim on that. But I tell you what, Rita and I drink a lot of wine, and most of it's me drinking it. And when we drink our own wine, we never have a hangover because they are clean.
Never
they're
have
clean.
a headache.
Never.
We don't drink enough to have a hangover.
No, hangover, headache.
I'm not sure.
I wish I could say the same, Rita. I had a stinking hangover. What was it, 3-4 weeks ago? And he took me out on the bike.
Oh, bless.
But I think the point is that when we go out, and sometimes we go to a restaurant or a pub or something, and we're forced to drink wines that are, let's say, industrial quantities.
Quality, you mean?
Produced in industrial quantities, which means that they are stabilized and produced in industrial ways. They are not treated in the same way as people who look after their wine. So you're talking about Neasa. They're not biodynamic necessarily, but they respect the soil. And actually, Roy, on the top right hand of my screen, Roy is one of our neighbours, and he's a farmer. He's a farmer, and he produces sheep organically, and he produces sheep that they're absolutely wonderful. We buy Roy's sheep, and that's what we eat. And he has a respect. He and his family and his farm has a respect for what they're producing, and we respect that absolutely. Yeah. And it's the same thing. So I would expect when we eat Roy's sheep, which we do, you don't get a headache from sort of mass-produced cattle, but or sheep. But however, it's the same thing, but just a different product. And so I have no doubt at all that we drink a lot of wine. We never get a hangover because we're drinking wine from people who produce it respectfully. Who care. Yeah. And that's the difference. Yeah. And we absolutely know when sometimes you can't help but buy.
Well, we have to drink other wines.
You have to get, if you're going out, you have to drink stuff. And we sometimes get a headache when we've gone to a restaurant or we've been out with people who are offering us wines who are bought from a supermarket, and we get headaches. And we say nothing because that would be rude, but we know, we do know.
Yeah, so we're in that lucky position where we really don't have to drink anything else.
We do know what the difference is.
Unless we go elsewhere.
Yeah. But I tell you what,
I'm sorry, I am going to have to stop you.
We've got to eat.
But we do need to eat.
Absolutely.
We have something else to move on to as well.
Yeah, okay. So, but tell you what, but the next time I could have a pint or two of the John Bourne Malpass unpasteurized milk, it will be a great pleasure.
Well, indeed, I shall pass it on. We are very much looking forward when I can't remember who he was in the news today, but the Welsh minister unlocks the borders. We shall be down, and we'd love to see you both and take you out for a bit of supper. So
I think we're getting there.
Yeah, that's top of mind for us. So anyway, where you can suggest, we'll fire you a couple of dates via email, and we'll come on down and have a word and take a few cases away. But
for you to pick up across.
You might need to keep them for a little bit longer, and I'm happy to add to the collection, Mark. Indeed, I'm always happy to add to the collection.
We're in the chances of extending, we should have like built, you know,
A
some
wine
sort
cellar.
of wine cellar, or wine room.
Maybe we would.
You've got the space.
Yeah, excellent. Well,
Yeah.
well, it's been lovely to have
Yeah.
a few moments just to chat to you, actually, because it's been such a long time.
We should just let it go a bit longer. But it's very difficult with too many people on the screen because
Agreed.
you can't have conversations.
Completely agree. Anyway, we're going to dive off. We're going to go make a bit of our stuff, but we're having the onion soup tomorrow for lunch. Actually, we don't always get the opportunity to do the recipes in the week because of work and children and all the other bits and pieces. But thank you very much indeed. Lovely to have chatted to you both, and then hopefully see you soon.
Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Bye for now.
See you, Michael and Pat. See you, Roy and Louise. See you, Rachel. See you, Mark.
Oh, Rachel's sort of
Hang
there.
on.
but
See you.
not
There you go. Bye. Bye, you guys.
Bye.